Florida might look like just theme parks and beaches, but that couldn't be further from the truth. From a river that flows uphill to a lake that explodes fish, Florida hides secrets so extreme they'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the Sunshine State. In this video, we're revealing 50 facts about Florida that will completely change how you see the state. From singing sand dunes and underwater forests to a town built on top of a giant bubble, sinkholes that swallow houses overnight, and a spring where the water is always 72 degrees no matter the season. This is the side of Florida nobody ever talks about. While we always aim to share the most accurate and fascinating information, these videos are based on our own research and interpretation. We encourage you to explore these places yourself, because Florida is even stranger in real life. Fact 50. The river that flows north. The St. Johns River is one of the few rivers in North America that flows north instead of south. Stretching 310 miles from its headwaters near Vero Beach to Jacksonville, the river defies conventional river behavior. Most rivers flow from high elevations to low following gravity southward. But the St. Johns flows backward because Florida is so flat that the river's source is actually at a higher elevation than much of North Florida. The drop is only about 30 feet over its entire length, making it one of the laziest rivers in America. During heavy rains or high tides, sections of the river actually reverse direction completely, flowing south before turning north again. Fact 49. The lake that rains. Fish. Lake Okeechobee occasionally experiences waterspouts, essentially tornadoes over water that suck up fish and carry them miles away before dropping them. Residents in communities surrounding the lake report fish falling from the sky during severe storms. We're not talking about a few fish. These events drop hundreds of bass, bream, and catfish onto roads, lawns, and rooftops. The fish are alive when they land, flopping desperately until residents collect them or they die in the sun. Ancient peoples considered fish rain a divine blessing. Modern meteorologists explain it as simple physics, but watching fish fall from a clear sky remains deeply surreal. Fact 48. The spring that never changes temperature. Wakulla Springs maintains a constant temperature of exactly 70 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, never varying more than a degree or two. When air temperatures hit 95 degrees in summer, the spring is 70. When cold fronts drop temperatures to 40 in winter, the spring is still 70. The consistency results from the spring's depth and the fact that water emerges from the Floridan Aquifer, a massive underground reservoir insulated from surface temperature changes. The spring pumps 400,000 gallons per minute, one of the largest freshwater springs on Earth. Swimming in it feels bizarre, jumping from hot air into cold water in summer, or from cold air into relatively warm water in winter. Fact 47. The sand that sings. The white sand beaches along the Panhandle contain quartz so pure that it squeaks and sings when you walk on it. The sound comes from the friction of perfectly round quartz grains rubbing together as your foot compresses them. The beach literally makes music as you walk. The effect is strongest on dry sand and on the whitest beaches like Siesta Key, where the sand is 99% pure quartz. Scientists believe the quartz originated from the Appalachian Mountains, eroded over millions of years, and carried to Florida by ancient rivers. The singing sand is so unusual that early explorers wrote about it in their journals, describing beaches that hummed under their boots. Fact 46. The underwater forest. Off the coast of Alabama and extending into Florida, waters lies an ancient cypress forest that's been underwater for thousands of years. Hurricane Ivan in 2004 shifted enough sand to expose the forest, revealing massive tree stumps and logs preserved in salt water. The forest grew about 60,000 years ago during the last ice age, when sea levels were 400 feet lower, and the coastline extended miles farther into what's now the Gulf of Mexico. The trees were buried by rising seas and sediment, essentially pickled in an oxygen-free environment that prevented decay. Divers describe swimming through a ghost forest with tree trunks standing upright, their branches still intact, barnacles growing where leaves once hung. Fact 45. The lake that disappeared overnight. In 1999, Lake Jackson near Tallahassee drained completely in less than 24 hours. Residents woke to find a lake bed where 4,000 acres of water had been the day before. The lake disappeared down a sinkhole that opened at the bottom, swallowing millions of gallons into underground caverns. Fish flopped desperately in shrinking puddles. Alligators crawled across mud searching for water. The event exposed Civil War-era structures and a vintage car that had been missing for decades. The lake eventually refilled when the sinkhole clogged with sediment, but it's happened repeatedly. The lake drained again in 2021, disappearing just as spectacularly. Locals now know that Lake Jackson is more of a temporary feature than a permanent lake. Fact 44. The town built on a bubble. The town of Winter Park sits atop a massive underground cavern system, so extensive that the ground is essentially a thin crust over empty space. Sinkholes open regularly, sometimes without warning. In 1981, a sinkhole opened in downtown Winter Park that swallowed a house, part of a Porsche dealership, a municipal pool, and sections of street. The sinkhole eventually stabilized at 350 feet wide and 75 feet deep. Today it's a lake in the middle of town, a permanent reminder that the ground beneath Winter Park is anything but solid. Geologists have mapped extensive cave systems beneath the city, but no one knows their full extent. Residents joke they live on borrowed time, waiting for the next sinkhole to swallow another chunk of town. Fact 43. The river made of grass. The Everglades isn't a swamp, it's a river. The entire ecosystem is essentially a 60-mile-wide river that flows south from Lake Okeechobee to Florida Bay at a rate of about 100 feet per day. The water is rarely more than a few feet deep, moving so slowly that it appears stagnant. But it's flowing constantly, a sheet of water sliding across limestone bedrock covered in sawgrass. Early explorers called it the River of Grass, because from a distance it looks like an endless prairie. Only when you step into it do you realize you're standing in moving water. The flow is so gradual that the entire trip from Lake Okeechobee to the sea takes 4 to 6 months. Fact 42. The swamp that glows. During summer nights, certain Florida swamps produce an eerie blue-green glow from bioluminescent organisms in the water. Disturb the water by paddling a kayak or dipping your hand in, and you create trails of sparkling light. The phenomenon is caused by dinoflagellates, single-celled organisms that flash when agitated. The Indian River Lagoon near Titusville is famous for these glowing waters. Kayakers describe it as paddling through liquid stars, with every stroke creating explosions of light. Fish darting beneath the surface leave glowing trails like underwater meteors. The effect is most dramatic on moonless nights when the bioluminescence provides the only light, turning the swamp into an alien landscape. Fact 41. The cave you can drive through. Florida Cavern State Park contains the only air-filled caves in Florida accessible to the public. Most of Florida's caves are underwater, but these formed when sea levels were lower. The caves contain elaborate formations including stalactites, stalagmites, and flowstone. What makes them truly bizarre is that they exist in Florida at all. The state is so flat and water-saturated that dry caves shouldn't be possible. Yet here they are, proof that Florida once had dramatically different geography. During droughts, some of the cave passages connect to underground rivers where you can hear water flowing through darkness, heading towards springs miles away. Fact 40. The springs that boil. Despite the name, Boiling Springs near Lake County doesn't actually boil, but water erupts from underground with such force that it creates the appearance of boiling. The spring produces millions of gallons daily, the water surging upward with enough pressure to churn sand and create constant turbulence. The force is strong enough to push swimmers away from the spring vent. Divers who've investigated the source describe it as terrifying, like being in a washing machine. The spring connects to a vast underground river system, and the pressure pushing water to the surface comes from the entire weight of the Floridan aquifer pressing down. Fact 39. The lake filled with alligators and astronauts. Lake Banana in Cape Canaveral is home to both the Kennedy Space Center and an estimated 10,000 alligators. The lake's name comes from the banana plantations that once grew on its shores. Today, it sits within a wildlife refuge that surrounds NASA facilities. Alligators swim in the same waters where rocket debris occasionally falls. The juxtaposition is surreal. Watch a rocket launch, and you might see alligators lounging on the shore below, completely unbothered by the explosions overhead. The refuge protects one of Florida's densest alligator populations, specifically because public access is restricted for security reasons. The space program accidentally created a perfect alligator sanctuary. Fact 38. The beach that drives you. Daytona Beach is one of the few beaches in America where driving on the sand is legal. For over 100 years, cars have cruised along the hard-packed sand at low tide. The beach became famous for early automobile speed trials in the early 1900s, before racing moved to the Daytona Speedway. Today, you can literally park your car on the beach and set up chairs next to it. The experience is bizarre, watching traffic flow along the shoreline while waves crash a few feet away. Speed limits are enforced, lifeguards patrol. It's a functional highway that gets washed twice daily by tides. Fact 37. The river that explodes. The St. Lucie River occasionally turns toxic green from massive algae blooms that kill fish by the thousands. The blooms are so thick they form mats several inches deep that coat everything. When the algae die, they consume oxygen in the water, creating dead zones where nothing can survive. Fish suffocate and wash ashore in enormous piles that rot in the sun, creating a smell so overpowering that nearby communities evacuate. The blooms result from nutrient pollution, primarily from Lake Okeechobee discharges. The explosions of algae are becoming more frequent and more intense, turning a once clear river into a biological disaster zone. Fact 36. The town where streets flood daily. Miami Beach experiences sunny day flooding, where streets fill with seawater even when it's not raining. Rising sea levels and high tides combine to push water through storm drains, flooding streets from below. The flooding is tidal, arriving on schedule during high tide and draining away hours later. Residents plan their lives around it. Cars drive through a foot of seawater during high tide. Businesses install pumps and flood barriers. The city has spent hundreds of millions on pumping systems and raised roads. But the problem accelerates as seas continue rising. Eventually, entire neighborhoods may be uninhabitable, not from catastrophic storms, but from routine daily flooding. Fact 35. The lake with two colors. Where the Suwannee River meets the Gulf of Mexico, you can see a sharp boundary between brown river water and blue ocean water. The two bodies of water flow side by side for miles without mixing, creating a visible line through the water. The river water is stained brown by tannins from cypress swamps. The ocean water is clear blue. The density difference keeps them separated. You can paddle a kayak along the boundary with brown water on one side and blue on the other. The mixing eventually occurs miles offshore, but the initial boundary is so distinct, it looks photoshopped. Fact 34. The forest that floods. The Big Cypress. Swamp floods seasonally, transforming from dry forest to standing water depending on rainfall. During dry season, you can walk through the forest on dry ground. During wet season, the same forest is under 3 feet of water. Trees have adapted to this cycle, developing specialized root systems that can survive both flood and drought. The transition is dramatic. Within a week of heavy rains, the entire landscape transforms. Roads that were dry become impassable. Walking trails disappear underwater. The forest becomes a swamp, then drains again months later. Fact 33. The beach made of shells. Sanibel Island's beaches aren't made of sand. They're composed almost entirely of seashells. The island's east-west orientation and shallow waters create perfect conditions for shells to accumulate. After storms, shells pile several feet deep. Shell collectors from around the world travel to Sanibel, walking the beaches in the distinctive Sanibel stoop, bent over searching for rare specimens. The variety is extraordinary. Hundreds of species from tiny coquinas to massive lightning whelks. Some beaches sound like wind chimes as waves roll shells against each other, creating a constant tinkling. Walking on shell beaches is painful in bare feet, like hiking across broken glass. Fact 32. The springs where manatees hibernate. Crystal River is one of the few places in North America where you can legally swim with manatees. Every winter, hundreds of manatees migrate to the springs seeking warm water. The springs maintain 72 degrees year-round, while coastal waters drop into the 60s, cold enough to kill manatees. The animals crowd into the spring runs, sometimes packed so densely you can walk across them. Swimming among them is surreal, these massive gentle animals floating in crystal clear water, exhaling bubbles and munching aquatic plants. The springs literally save their lives, providing thermal refuge during cold snaps that would otherwise kill them. Fact 31. The lake. That's actually an ocean. Lake Worth. Lagoon isn't a lake at all, it's a saltwater lagoon separated from the Atlantic Ocean by a narrow barrier island. Early settlers called it a lake before they realized it was connected to the sea. The name stuck despite being completely inaccurate. The lagoon is home to marine life including sharks, rays, and sea turtles. You can catch ocean fish in Lake Worth. The confusion has led to numerous misunderstandings over the years, including freshwater fishermen who were shocked to hook saltwater species. Fact 30. The road that vanishes. The Tamiami Trail crosses the Everglades on a raised causeway, but during extreme high water, sections of the road disappear underwater. Drivers find themselves plowing through flooded highway, with water sometimes reaching door level. The road becomes a shallow river with a paved bottom. Alligators cross the flooded highway. Fish swim over the road. During severe floods, the road becomes completely impassable, cutting off communities on either side. The flooding demonstrates how little separates Florida's infrastructure from the swamp it's built on. Fact 29. The swamp where trees walk. Mangrove forests in the Everglades appear to walk because the trees grow prop roots that extend outward from the trunk. As the roots establish, the tree shifts position slowly, migrating across the swamp over decades. The roots also capture sediment, building land as the forest expands. Mangroves are literally creating Florida, adding acres of new land every year. Walk through a mangrove forest and you're walking through an ecosystem that's actively building itself, transforming sea into swamp into forest. Fact 28. The river made of limestone. The Itchatucknee River flows over limestone bedrock so white and pure that the water appears to glow blue. The river is spring-fed, emerging from underground sources and flowing through forest before joining the Santa Fe River. The water is so clear, you can see every pebble on the bottom 10 feet down. The limestone creates natural water parks with chutes, pools, and gentle rapids perfect for tubing. But the real magic is the color, an impossible electric blue that looks artificial. The blue comes from the way light scatters in the crystal clear water, creating a color you'd expect in the Caribbean, not a Florida forest. Fact 27. The lake that eats boats. Lake Okeechobee can generate waves over 6 feet high during storms despite being relatively shallow. The lake covers 730 square miles but averages only 9 feet deep. When winds blow across this vast, shallow expanse, the water piles up rapidly, creating dangerous conditions. Small boats capsize regularly. The lake's name comes from Seminole words meaning big water, and it's killed dozens of people caught on open water during sudden squalls. The combination of shallow water and large surface area creates conditions more dangerous than many ocean coastlines. Fact 26. The spring that smells like rotten eggs. Sulfur. Springs in Tampa produces water laden with hydrogen sulfide, giving it the distinctive smell of rotten eggs. Despite the stench, people bathed in the springs for decades, believing the sulfur had therapeutic properties. A resort operated there from the 1920s through the 1960s. Today, the spring still flows, pumping thousands of gallons of smelly water daily. The odor is so strong it permeates the surrounding neighborhood. Residents have grown accustomed to it, but visitors are often shocked by the intensity of the smell wafting from a natural spring. Fact 25. The forest under the sea. The Florida Keys Reef Tract contains forests of elkhorn and staghorn coral that once stood above water. During the last ice age, when sea levels were 400 feet lower, these corals grew on dry land. As seas rose, the coral continued growing upward, maintaining its position near the surface. Today, these structures are underwater forests, their branches home to thousands of fish species. Divers swim through coral thickets that look exactly like underwater trees, complete with trunks and spreading branches. The formations are so tree-like that early explorers thought they were seeing submerged forests. Fact 24. The river that burns. The Caloosahatchee River occasionally catches fire when lightning strikes oil sheens on the water surface. The river receives agricultural runoff that includes oils and chemicals. During dry periods, these substances concentrate and create flammable slicks. Lightning strikes have ignited these slicks multiple times, creating flames that race across the water surface. Firefighters describe it as surreal. Using water to extinguish water, the fires typically burn out quickly, but the sight of a river on fire remains deeply disturbing. Fact 23. The beach that glows at night. Certain Florida beaches experience bioluminescence so intense that waves glow bright blue, and every footstep in the wet sand creates a glowing print. The phenomenon peaks in summer when dinoflagellates bloom in massive numbers. Swimming at night becomes magical, your body outlined in blue light, every movement creating trails of sparkles. The beaches experiencing this regularly include areas along the Space Coast and in Mosquito Lagoon. Locals call it Bio Bay, and plan nighttime kayaking specifically to experience the glow. Fact 22. The lake built on a sinkhole. Lake Jackson sits in a massive sinkhole depression. The entire lake is essentially a giant sinkhole that filled with water. Underneath the lake bottom are caverns and passages connected to underground rivers. When these passages open, the lake drains. When they clog with sediment, the lake refills. The cycle has repeated throughout history. Native Americans knew the lake appeared and disappeared and planned accordingly. Modern residents are less prepared, developing expensive lakefront property only to watch it become worthless when the lake drains every few decades. Fact 21. The spring where dinosaurs drank. Fossil remains found in springs around Florida prove that ancient creatures drank from the same water sources still flowing today. Mammoth bones, saber-toothed tiger skulls, and giant sloth skeletons have been recovered from spring vents. These animals died at springs that continue flowing millions of years later. When you swim in a Florida spring, you're swimming in water that's been flowing continuously since before humans existed, water that mammoths and Ice Age predators drank from the same source. Fact 20. The forest that drowns. The Apalachicola. National Forest floods regularly during hurricane season, transforming into a vast, shallow lake. Trees stand in water for months at a time. Roads disappear underwater. The forest becomes navigable only by boat. What makes this remarkable is the trees' adaptation. They've evolved to survive extended flooding, developing hollow trunks and specialized root systems. The forest drowns and resurrects annually, demonstrating remarkable resilience to conditions that would kill most temperate forests. Fact 19. The river that flows underground. The Chipola River disappears underground for a stretch near Mariana, flowing through Florida caverns before re-emerging downstream. During high water, the surface channel carries water. During low water, the river vanishes completely underground, leaving a dry stream bed. You can walk across the dry riverbed knowing that beneath your feet, millions of gallons are flowing through limestone passages. The underground section is accessible to cave divers, who describe swimming through darkness following the river through subterranean chambers. Fact 18. The lake made of acid. Several Florida lakes have naturally acidic water with pH levels as low as 4.5, similar to orange juice. The acidity comes from tannins leaching from cypress swamps and peat deposits. These blackwater lakes support unique ecosystems adapted to the extreme conditions. The water is stained dark brown, almost opaque. Swimming in them feels strange, the water soft and slippery from organic acids. Despite the acidity, these lakes support fish and other life specifically adapted to the harsh chemistry. Fact 17. The beach that moves. Longboat Key's southern beaches migrate northward at a rate of about 10 feet per year. Currents and wave action constantly erode the southern tip while depositing sand at the northern end. The island is literally walking north. Structures built on the beach in the 1960s are now hundreds of feet from the shore, stranded inland as the beach moved away from them. Other buildings that were inland are now beachfront as the shoreline migrated to meet them. The entire island is slowly rotating and shifting, making permanent beachfront construction essentially impossible. Fact 16. The spring that's a time machine. Devil's Den is a spring inside a cave where you can dive in water that's been underground for 10,000 years. The water entering the aquifer during the last ice age is just now emerging from this spring. When you swim in Devil's Den, you're literally swimming in ice age water. The spring maintains 72 degrees year-round and features a shaft of sunlight that penetrates the cave opening, illuminating the impossibly clear water. Divers describe it as swimming in liquid crystal. Fact 15. The river that glows yellow. The Suwannee River runs golden brown from tannins, but during certain conditions it develops an eerie yellow glow. The effect is most visible during low light when the tannins reflect sunlight in specific ways. The river looks like flowing honey or liquid gold. Early explorers described it as a river of amber. The coloring is natural, caused by organic compounds from the Okefenokee Swamp, but the intensity of the yellow on certain days borders on supernatural. Fact 14. The lake where cars sink. Lake George contains hundreds of submerged vehicles, possibly the highest concentration of underwater cars in America. The steep drop-offs and deep holes make it popular for disposing of stolen vehicles and evidence. Divers exploring the lake report finding car graveyards, dozens of vehicles scattered across the bottom. Some are visible from boats, ghostly shapes lurking just beneath the surface. The lake is so large and deep that recovering all the vehicles would be impossible. They're permanent residents now, slowly rusting away in the darkness. Fact 13. The beach where sharks hunt. New Smyrna. Beach is the shark bite capital of the world, accounting for more shark encounters than anywhere else on Earth. The combination of murky water, abundant baitfish, and shallow sandbars creates perfect conditions for mistaken identity. Surfers paddling on boards look remarkably like turtles from below. Most bites are minor, sharks realizing their mistake and releasing immediately. But the frequency is astonishing. On busy summer days, sharks and swimmers share the same breaks, separated by inches of water and occasional painful encounters. Fact 12. The spring that never ends. Silver Springs produces 550 million gallons of water daily, making it one of the largest springs on Earth. The water emerges from an aquifer that extends under much of central Florida, essentially an underground ocean trapped in limestone. The spring's output is so consistent that it's been used as a water source for over 10,000 years. Native Americans built settlements around it. Glass-bottom boat tours have operated here for over 130 years. Because the water is so clear, you can see the bottom 80 feet down. The spring feels bottomless, a window into the vast underground world beneath Florida. Fact 11. The swamp that sings. The Okefenokee Swamp creates strange humming and moaning sounds as gases escape from decomposing peat. The sounds vary from low moans to high-pitched whistles depending on pressure and temperature. Seminoles called it the land of trembling earth because peat deposits shake when you walk on them, releasing bubbles that create sounds. Modern visitors describe the swamp as alive with noise, constant croaking, bubbling, and mysterious hums that seem to come from everywhere and nowhere. The acoustic properties of water and vegetation amplify sounds, creating an otherworldly symphony. Fact 10. The lake that exploded. Lake Apopka experienced a massive fish kill in 1998 that covered the lake surface with dead fish as far as the eye could see. An estimated 12 million fish died when pesticide-contaminated sediments were stirred up by storms. The fish suffocated as toxins consumed oxygen in the water. The smell was overpowering, detectable for miles. Cleanup crews filled trucks with rotting fish for weeks. The lake still hasn't fully recovered over 20 years later, its ecosystem permanently altered by decades of agricultural pollution. Fact 9. The river that reverses. The St. Johns River reverses flow during extreme tidal events, flowing south instead of north. The river is so flat and its gradient so minimal that strong tides can overpower the normal flow. During hurricane storm surges, the river can reverse for days, pushing saltwater miles inland. Fish that normally live near the river mouth suddenly appear far upstream. The reversal demonstrates how precariously Florida's rivers balance between land and sea. Fact 8. The beach that disappears annually. Treasure Island's beaches erode away completely during winter storms, leaving only a rocky seawall. Every summer, the county trucks in thousands of tons of sand to rebuild the beach. By the following winter, it's gone again. The cycle costs millions annually. Beachfront property owners wake up after storms to find their beach has vanished overnight. The county essentially maintains a temporary beach that exists only during calm weather, a Sisyphean task of fighting erosion that can never be won. Fact 7. The spring that breeds giants. Homosassa. Springs is home to some of Florida's largest manatees because the consistent temperature and abundant food create ideal conditions for growth. Manatees in the spring regularly exceed 2,000 pounds, significantly larger than coastal populations. The spring also shelters massive tarpon and grouper that grow to unusual sizes. The combination of protection, temperature, and food creates a refuge where animals grow bigger than anywhere else in Florida. Divers describe it as swimming in an aquarium of giants. Fact 6. The River of Blood. After heavy rains, the Peace River runs red with iron-rich clay eroded from phosphate mines. The water looks like blood, opaque rust-colored liquid flowing to the sea. The coloring is natural iron oxide, but the intensity is shocking. Fish somehow survive in the red water. Birds drink from it. The river remains red for days or weeks after major storms, staining everything it touches orange. Eventually, the sediment settles and the river clears, until the next storm releases another flood of red. Fact 5. The Lake That Breathes. Lake Okeechobee's water level rises and falls in a daily rhythm like breathing. The lake inhales when evaporation exceeds inflow, dropping slightly during hot afternoons. It exhales overnight when cooler temperatures reduce evaporation and water seeps in from surrounding wetlands. The cycle repeats daily, the lake expanding and contracting by inches. Over longer periods, seasonal cycles create dramatic changes measured in feet. The lake is literally alive, responding to temperature, rainfall, and the rhythm of days and seasons. Fact 4. The Spring That Hides Bones. Little Salt. Spring near Sarasota is an underwater archaeological treasure containing human remains and artifacts over 12,000 years old. Ancient peoples used the spring as a water source and occasionally fell in and drowned. Their bodies sank into the deep, oxygen-free water where they were preserved perfectly. Divers have recovered human skeletons, along with extinct animal bones and prehistoric tools. The spring is essentially a time capsule, preserving a snapshot of Florida's Ice Age inhabitants. It's one of the most important archaeological sites in North America, and it's a water-filled hole in the ground. Fact 3. The River That Flows Through Your House. During severe floods, the Myakka River expands so dramatically that it flows through homes built on its floodplain. The river rises 10 to 15 feet during hurricanes, transforming from a narrow stream into a river over a mile wide. Houses designed with the first floor elevated become boat docks. Fish swim through living rooms. Alligators float past kitchen windows. The floods recede after a few days, but they demonstrate how temporary Florida's distinction between land and water truly is. Fact 2. The Beach Made of Crystals. Under magnification, the white sand of Siesta Key Beach reveals itself as pure quartz crystals, each grain a tiny gemstone. The sand is 99% pure quartz, finer and whiter than almost any other beach on Earth. The crystals are so reflective that even on the hottest days, the sand stays cool to the touch, because it reflects heat rather than absorbing it. Walk barefoot on Siesta Key, and you're literally walking on crushed jewels. Billions of tiny crystals that squeak and sing underfoot. Fact 1. The state built on extinction. Florida's entire landscape sits atop a massive graveyard of extinct creatures. The limestone forming the bedrock is composed entirely of compressed seashells and coral from ancient reefs. Beneath the surface lie fossils of mammoths, saber-toothed tigers, giant ground sloths, and countless other species that vanished thousands of years ago. Every building, every road, every swimming pool in Florida is built on the compressed remains of billions of organisms that lived and died when Florida was underwater. The state is literally constructed from death, layer upon layer of extinct life compressed into the rock that supports the Sunshine State. Dig anywhere in Florida, and you're excavating through time, through layers of creatures that ruled this land when it was a very different world. So there you have it. 50 absolutely absurd facts about Florida that sound fake but aren't. From rivers that flow backwards and lakes that disappear, to beaches made of crystals and forests under the sea, Florida is a place where the impossible becomes routine, and where every landscape reveals the strange truth that this peninsula exists on the edge between land and water, always shifting, always surprising, and always stranger than you expect.